everybody. If you are not hearing the familiar, the broadcast is starting. That's because we had to do some audio testing earlier, but we are officially starting our last GeoTalks Express webinar of the year, answering your frequently asked questions. I'm Rachel Landry. I'm the marketing assistant here at Blue Marble, and my co-host today is Mackenzie Mills.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you guys are having a great day, whether it's morning, afternoon, or whatever time it is for you. And just thank you for joining us for this GeoTalks Express session. I hope that we'll answer maybe some of your frequently asked questions during this hour-long session today. And let's get into it, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so just a couple housekeeping items to go over before we get into the content of this hour of this session. A few notes about the webinar format. Attendees of this webinar are in listen-only mode, so hopefully you are able to hear us, but unfortunately we cannot hear you. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the questions panel that you should see as part of the GoToWebinar interface. We'll try to keep an eye on that and maybe answer some questions as they come up in real time here. But if we don't answer your question, just know that we've seen it and we may follow up with you, or we may use some of these great questions that you guys asked to help us create maybe some short form videos or perhaps another webinar beginning of next year. Lastly, this session is being recorded by GoToWebinar, so if you have to step out or you couldn't attend the session is recorded, and all registered attendees will be emailed access to the recorded version of this presentation a little bit after the live session today.
So, like I said, this is our last GeoTalks Express session for 2022, and we are getting ready to kick off the 2023 year with GeoTalks, of course, 2023, which is a free day-long conference for geospatial professionals and GIS enthusiasts. It happens to be on January 25th. And it will be starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time and will go to about 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. Again, this will also be recorded, so if you do need to step out, like Mackenzie said, for this webinar that is also applicable to GeoTalks 2023, you can actually come in and out throughout the day. For more information at this point, you can go to bluemarblego.com/GeoTalks-2023. And if you're on our mailing list, you should have gotten an email about this event today where you can register and stay up to date with all of the news and whatnot about GeoTalks 2023.
Other upcoming events that we have coming from Blue Marble are some upcoming training classes for the beginning part of next year. Typically, as of late, we've been doing our training classes online, so virtual sessions, and these are where an instructor is leading a class, talking about the software, how to use it, and then you also, attendees, follow along and complete some workflows so that they can learn as much as they can about GlobalMapper and GlobalMapper Pro. Our classes are starting in February, towards the end of February, the 20th to the 24th. We'll have an online GlobalMapper class, and then February 28th, not to March 20th, that would be too long. I think it's just a 2-day session. We'll have LiDAR processing online. So all about working with LiDAR data and point clouds and really getting the most out of the data there through the GlobalMapper Pro program. And then in March, we're bringing back some in-person classes. So we're planning on having an in-person class in Orlando, Florida, at the end of March, March 28th and 29th, 2 full-day sessions for GlobalMapper, and then March 30th as a 1-day session for all about LiDAR data and LiDAR processing. So if you're interested in learning online with Blue Marble or attending an in-person class, you can check out those dates and more dates for the beginning of 2023 on our website, bluemarblegeo.com/GIS-training.
Oh, okay, here we go.
So getting into the webinar, we'll begin with our content here. This session is all about answering frequently asked questions that we get from our GlobalMapper users. So one of the most frequently asked questions that we have, that we get in all forms of communication from our users, is what license type do I need? Because we do offer a few different license types for GlobalMapper. So Rachel's going to go ahead and talk about
We
the different
do.
types of license and who might be able to use which one.
Yes, I'm sorry about my squeaky chair just then, but here we go. So what type of license do you need of GlobalMapper? Well, we have 4 different license types to go over. The first one that we'll talk about is the single user node locked license. So like its name implies, it is locked to a computer. It's ideal for a single user who consistently works on one computer. Because if you need to switch it, you can only move it up to 2 times a year. And for that, you'd probably need to talk to our authorization team, which you can contact through orders@bluemarblegeo.com if you ever need to know how to move that license. But like I said, this is ideal for one person on one laptop or a desktop, whatever you're using it on. If you think you're going to need to move your license more than 2 times per year, I would recommend considering one of our other license types, such as the single user floating license. So the single user floating license is good for small groups of users or one person who consistently changes laptops or computers. So with this license, you can move it between computers an unlimited amount of times as long as you follow the proper removal procedure. And again, if you have questions about what that procedure is, you can find more information on our website, or you can contact orders@bluemarblegeo.com. They're full of useful information and can definitely help you with moving your license. Another important feature of this license is that it's RDP enabled, so you can use it remotely. So if you are working from home and you have GlobalMapper on your computer at work, you can remote in and access it. You don't need to worry about shifting your license to your home computer. You can just access it whenever you need it. Our next type of license is a USB dongle. So this is also ideal for a single user or for small groups of users because this license is actually stored on a USB key. So you can move it between an unlimited amount of computers as long as you have the USB key and those computers have GlobalMapper installed. Our next type of license is our network license. So this license is very convenient for, say, an office or a larger group of users because this license is stored on a network server and it can be accessed from different points, potentially all around the world, but generally within an office or a network of offices. So like I said, it's hosted on a network server. So with this license, you need to purchase a minimum of 2 seats. So what a seat means is that it's a license. So if you purchase 2 seats for, say, 4 users, you can have 2 users using it at a time. If you decide that you need more seats, you can add as many as you want, but this is ideal for a group of users. And if you have questions about these types of licenses, feel free to put it in the chat and we will try to answer them as they come in, or we will follow up with you after this broadcast. But for this, we'll go back to our frequently asked questions. And our next question is, can I copy and paste features into GlobalMapper?
All right, that is a great question, and it's one we get pretty frequently. Copy and paste is a really convenient way to, move data from one layer to another, or even one workspace to another in GlobalMapper. So to demonstrate this functionality, I'm going to bring up a GlobalMapper workspace that I have here. And this is the towns of Maine. I'm looking at a specific town here on the coast. I have some line data layers here as well. I have some roads in gray and then major power lines or transmission lines represented in red here. And what I'm going to do is just start by selecting a feature or two with my digitizer tool. So I've enabled that from the toolbar, and I can select a feature. Here in GlobalMapper, I've selected this town boundary, and I can go up to the edit menu And we have options right at the top, as you would expect, to copy selected features, to cut selected features, maybe a cut and paste, or paste features once they've been copied. Aside from the edit menu, this functionality is also accessible through the common keyboard shortcuts. So I can use Control-C to copy a feature. The first time I do it in GlobalMapper, I get a little notification. And then Control-V or the edit menu option to paste this selected feature or features within this one workspace. So the default option here is to paste the feature to the original layer. In this particular case, unless I want to create a duplicate feature in my main towns layer, that's probably not the option I want to select. You can select an existing layer to paste this feature to. You can create a sort of generic user created features layer. In recent versions of GlobalMapper, we've moved away from using the generic user created features layer a little bit more, but it is still there as an option when you're creating features and pasting features within a workspace. We can paste to a new layer and append copy to the end of the original layer name. Or I'm going to choose this option to create a new layer to paste to. I can click OK, and I will be prompted to name this layer. And I believe this is the town of Rockport in Maine. So I will give that the layer name. I can deselect any features in GlobalMapper and turn off my overall main towns layer. And I still have Rockport here. I can grab the feature info tool to take a look at this feature, because not only has the geometry been copied and pasted from one layer to a new layer here, the attributes within this vector feature have been copy and pasted as well. So vector features are very nice because they're really easy to work with that way. Now this has been copy and paste right in one workspace. I've just done this with a single feature. You can actually copy and paste features between GlobalMapper workspaces as well. So to do that, I will turn off my single feature Rockport layer here, bring back my main towns. And again, I'll start with the digitizer tool, and I'm going to select the same town of Rockport here. But this time I'm going to right click and get to my digitizer context menu and use an advanced selection option to select all line features within the selected area, because I want to copy the town boundary and the transmission lines and roads that are within this town boundary. So I want to select no here. I want to select all lines that are not completely contained within the feature, but have sort of any overlap with this feature as well, or partially within this feature. Doing that, I see that the lines are selected, but GlobalMapper has deselected that town boundary. I can pretty easily reselect that by holding the Control key to just add a feature to selection. Now I've got two types of features selected here. I've got lines and a polygon. I can use the Control-C or the Edit menu option to copy this data. And then I'll go to a blank GlobalMapper workspace here, Control-V to paste this data. Now for this operation, I am going to leave this default answer to paste these features to the original layer if possible to maintain the feature names. And here we go. We've got just those selected features brought into my new workspace that I've just started. I can deselect all the features. The styles that I've applied in the original workspace have been maintained, and we have these features. Just like before with the feature info tool, the attributes and other information associated with these vector features has been brought over to this new workspace as well. From here, of course, I can continue working with these data layers. I can edit them further. I can bring in additional data, but I have just taken features from one layer or one workspace and brought them into a new layer or workspace with a simple copy and paste function, similar to what you'd find in many other programs. So with that, I think that answered pretty well, hopefully it answered pretty well the copy and paste functionality in GlobalMapper, and we'll return to our agenda, our list of frequently asked questions. And our next question is, how do I mosaic data and how do I tile data? Now this is a great question and one that we do get a lot, and it's pretty easy to do in GlobalMapper. To answer this question, we're actually going to play a video recorded by one of our application specialists showing how to mosaic and how to tile data in GlobalMapper.
Hello, I'm Gus, a member of the software support team here at Blue Marble, and today I'm going to be answering the question of how do I tile and mosaic imagery in GlobalMapper. You can see here that I have a raster layer. It is currently in GlobalMapper package format. This is the recommended format for storing streamed online data sources locally. So export your online data source to GlobalMapper package format, and then once you have that, you can load it in and export it to whatever your desired end goal format will be. So I'm going to right click here, export, layer export. I'm going to choose GeoTIFF for this particular example. I'm going to go to the tiling tab, and this gives us an opportunity to look through some of these options. We can specify the number of rows or columns our tiles. We can specify the width and height of each tile, or we can specify the width and height of each tile by pixel. This is only available for raster data, obviously. Or we can use selected area features for tiles. And that is what we're going to do today. It's currently grayed out because we don't have anything selected. So I'm going to close out of this quickly and select the parcel map here I'm going to use to export. So now we can go back to the tile tab, and we can see that use selected area features for tiles is now an option. So we're going to choose this option. We're going to crop to selected area features so that none of the borders around each tile will appear when we load the file back in. And we're going to choose sequential numbering for our naming of our tiles, and we are going to crop to the exact area boundary because we don't want any of the bounding boxes to appear in our new tiles. So I'm going to select yes. And this is Kingfield, Maine, so I'm going to call this, the imagery is from Kingfield, Maine, so I'm going to call these Kingfield tiles. And I'm going to Control U to unload what we previously had, and I'm going to select File, open all files from in a directory tree to open multiple files at once. We're going to navigate to our folder, which our tiles are in. We're going to search that folder with a specific mask, and that is going to be TIFF, so that we can ignore those projection files that were generated. We can see here that now we have our imagery loaded in, our tiled imagery. A quick tip for you have a lot of files that you want to turn on and off or work with as one single group. We can right click and then select group, and now we can turn off and on these tiles simultaneously. There is, in terms of the second half of the question, mosaicing, there is no dedicated mosaic tool in GlobalMapper. However, if we export through the file menu, then, and we do not select any tiling, so no tiling, then the resulting file will be a combination of all loaded data that we currently had in that instance of GlobalMapper. So I'm going to bring that in quickly. And we can see now that we have a composite of all of those tiles into a single GIF file.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gus, for covering that topic for us. We really appreciate your help. And I think it's time that we can move on to our next question, which is another question we get very often, and that is, where can I find LiDAR data? And Mackenzie, I believe you have that answer for us.
Yes, I do. So, Blue Marble, we produce the program GlobalMapper, but we are not necessarily data producers. So we, point our users to a lot of publicly available data that they can download and work with there. There is also the option to collect your own data for LiDAR. That might be, doing something with a drone, whether that's with a LiDAR sensor, collecting that LiDAR data, or using the some drone collected images and the pixels to points tool in GlobalMapper Pro to create some point cloud data from those images. But just as far as loading some point cloud data into GlobalMapper, there are a few places where users can look to find that data. So this is going to be mostly focused on sources from the USGS. So from the United States, I do apologize to our international users. I'm not super well versed in the availability of point cloud data worldwide. But within GlobalMapper, I'm actually going to start in the same workspace where I left off before and use the online sources tool to connect to online data. And within this data source to download from, we have a LiDAR group of sources here. Now in here we have a few different sources. We have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association Digital Coast LiDAR and Terrain Download. If we see something here that says download via a certain website, that means GlobalMapper, when I click connect, is actually going to push me out to a browser window, and I will be brought to the NOAA data access viewer. And it will use the extent of the workspace data that I have brought up in GlobalMapper, so right around Rockport, Maine here, and look for data within that area. Here we can see the results on one side from this particular source, and there's option for some bulk downloads, so I can download a lot of this data through this data viewer and data access point. Coming back to GlobalMapper, there's a couple other LiDAR data sources I'd just like to touch on that are available through this online data source dialog. We have the USGS public LiDAR access here. So this is entwined point tiles or EPT data, and it is available through Amazon Web Services. You do have to have an AWS key or authentication in order to log in and access this data. But through this, it's broken down by state within this dropdown, and you're able to enter that AWS authentication key and stream that data directly into GlobalMapper. Now that is streamed data, and it is streamed LiDAR, so those files can get large. There can be many, many tiles to work with. So it's great for viewing and visualization, but for any analysis, I would recommend exporting that data. And some of those exports can get quite large depending on the area of data you're looking at. But that's just another way to get that data directly into the GlobalMapper program. And again, that can be based on your current screen bounds, like any online source, or some latitude, longitude bounds, or within a currently selected polygon, like maybe this town parcel area here. One last place, another way to access the USGS LiDAR data is through this USGS National LiDAR dataset via the National Map download client. Again, this is going to push me out to a browser window, and all these online data sources do rely on the connectivity to the internet to access all of this data. And if you haven't explored the National Map download client and you are a user who's looking for data within the US, this is a really useful place to get not just LiDAR data, but some other data products as well. So we have the elevation products, the 3DEP, and that's gridded elevation. I'll uncheck that. We also have the elevation source data, so that's going to be LiDAR tiles. Again, GlobalMapper has used the extent that I had shown in the GlobalMapper program and brought that into the National Map download here. And I can pretty quickly search for products, and it'll come up with a list where I can view the footprints of the different tiles here. And from here, it's pretty easy to download any of these tiles. There's a download link next to each one. Now I do have one of these tiles already downloaded, since it does take a minute or two to download from my internet connection here. And I can grab that tile, load it into GlobalMapper. I've got that familiar LiDAR load options dialog. I'll just stick with my default settings here. And GlobalMapper will read in that point cloud data downloaded from the USGS download site. So it's going to display this point cloud, and this is a downloaded LAZ file now. So it's in my downloads folder currently, but I can move that to another location on my machine. I could, do some editing, do some processing with this tile of LiDAR data, maybe combine it with some additional tiles of data for the surrounding area, do some processing, do some editing, and then export this maybe to a final product or to something I'm ready to share with a colleague or a client. With any point cloud data that you get from any source, it should be 3D, so we can obviously view it with the path profile tool, drawing just a cross section across the data here, and we can see the depth of that data, and we can view it in the 3D viewer as well. So if I bring this up, we should be able to see the 3D view of this data.
There we go.
Here we go. So I've got some extrusion going on with some of my vector features here, but we've got some 3D data, and we can see it shaded by elevation as well. So those are just some simple sources of where to get some LiDAR, some point cloud data, and bring it into GlobalMapper. Again, Blue Marble, we're not really a data producer, but we produce a data-driven program. So it's always good to know where those publicly available sources of data are and where users can find those. And with that, I think we'll move on to our next frequently asked question here. It also relates to some point cloud data. Does the Pixels to Points tool support the use of ground control points? So the Pixels to Points tool in GlobalMapper takes overlapping drone images and processes them into a 3D point cloud, as well as some other outputs, and ground control points can be used. And to hear more about this process and how to use those ground control points, the importance of ground control points, I'm going to play a video recorded again by one of our technical application specialists, who's an expert here, and we'll hear some more about ground control points in the Pixels to Points tool.
So today I'm going to talk about how to add ground control points in Pixels to Point tool in GlobalMapper. So here I have some drone images in my GlobalMapper workspace. I've also loaded ground control points in the form of save file and the wall imagery as a background, which was exported to JPEG 2000 format. This was acquired from this free sources wall imagery. So let's open up the Pixel 2 Points tool. So in the input image file, we are going to load the image points that are loaded in the workspace by right-clicking and add loaded picture points. We can see the various information are related to the image, such as latitude, longitude, elevation, and camera information. Below that input image file dialog, we have an opportunity to add ground control points. This can be added in a number of ways. First, it can be added manually by just clicking new point if you know the exact location of your ground control point, and specify the information as such, or it can be also selected from the map. Another way to load the ground control point is right click and load control points from text file if you have control points saved in a text file.
But for this purpose, since I have a ground control points in a layer as a save file, I'm going to load it from a point layer and selecting the right one, which is ground control points. These options are also available in file menu and import control point from loaded point layer and load control points from text file. So here we have loaded the ground control points. In this case I have 9 points. So ground control points are well noticeable spots with known coordinates on the ground in the area of interest. They are used as a reference point to establish accurate position of photogrammic data to a coordinate system we are working in. It is very important in pixels to points or any other photogrammetric process for that matter. One of the main reason is due to the elevation values. The images collected from the drone images are not well known for its accuracy in terms of elevation. Ground control point allows us to further confirm the actual elevation at a given location. Moreover, at any time we add a ground control point, we add it to all the images in which it exists, which allows us to say, okay, everywhere I survey this feature, each image is going to get ground control points there because GlobalMapper approximates the images that are tied to the ground control points. So here I have 9 points. These are simulated ground control points. This was created after the fact that these drone images were not acquired, or they were not something we collected ourselves. But for this demonstration, I'm going to use these control points to show how they can be used to more accurately position the output files we are generating through this process. So for this process, I'm going to select point tree. After selecting the point tree, we can see scroll the file list, and we can see some of the files turning into green. This green list of images are GlobalMapper's suggestion where their ground control may appear based on the coordinate location of the ground control point and the approximation of image coverage of each of these images. To add the ground control point to the image, we have to click here, add control point to the image. In the image preview, we can zoom in. This is the noticeable feature, seems like a rock. So we will click here, add the ground control point here, and we go to the subsequent image and do the same process here, and we can see that the green color has changed to blue. This indicates that the control point is already present here. So ideally we would want to go one by one to the image, selecting the ground control points and going through the list of images and add control points. This will help to better tie the images to those ground control points and increase the accuracy of the output, getting most out of the surveyed control points we are working in. It's a manual process to go through and takes a little time. We have the options to edit or remove if we, for example, click in the wrong location. We can just select it and delete it and start again. So after tagging all the ground control points, which I'm not going to do it now because I have already done it and have my output ready. So I'm going to just select the output, just say it's Jubilee Farm. and setting all the setting all the parameters as default. It will take about hour and so, depending on the parameters and the specification of your machine. So the output will look like this, which will be one 3D mesh, auto image, and generated point clouds.
All right, so that was a great answer by another one of the members of our technical team. So hopefully you may know a little bit more about what the Pixels to Points tool does and how you can use ground control points and why you may want to use ground control points. And the Pixels to Points tool is part of the GlobalMapper Pro program. So to answer our next question, which is, can I upgrade my license from GlobalMapper Standard to GlobalMapper Pro? I'm going to throw it back to Rachel to talk a little bit more about the licensing of the program.
Okay, well, this is a great question. So I'm going to actually start this by talking about the GlobalMapper Standard Edition, which is what we call GlobalMapper. It is a complete and comprehensive GIS software. GlobalMapper Pro adds several tools that include drone data processing, point cloud editing, advanced terrain analysis, and of course, Python scripting. So what is important to know about GlobalMapper Pro, if you are looking to buy a completely new license for GlobalMapper or GlobalMapper Pro, it's important to understand that GlobalMapper Pro will not function without GlobalMapper Standard. So when you click on the GlobalMapper Pro purchase, so if you look on the right side of the screen, you'll see that there's GlobalMapper Standard. This use case is for single user node locked, as it says on the top of the screen. You'll see that GlobalMapper Standard is one line item and GlobalMapper Pro is a separate one. But when you go into your cart, you'll see GlobalMapper Standard and GlobalMapper Pro if you are purchasing a completely new license. So just make sure you leave both items in your cart and go to process, and you will have access to GlobalMapper Pro. The licensing is still the same. You'll use your order number to activate your license, and then you'll be ready to go. But if you already have a license of GlobalMapper, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have the current version, which is version 24. And if you have version 24, you can select the upgrade to Pro option. So that will just put the Pro license in your cart and you can purchase it and then activate it within your GlobalMapper. If you do not currently have GlobalMapper version 24, or if you happen to be out of our maintenance and support period, again, I'm going to refer you to orders@bluemarblegeo.com. That gives you access to our sales support team who can help with any sales related question and any licensing question. So those team members offer a wide variety of expertise and assistance. But to add GlobalMapper Pro to your GlobalMapper license, you just want to make sure that you have the most current version of GlobalMapper, and then you can purchase GlobalMapper Pro. But again, I would recommend, if you have any questions about what version you're on or how to add Pro to your license, please contact our sales support staff, again, at orders@bluemarblegeo.com. But we hope that you will try GlobalMapper Pro. If you aren't sure that it's right for you, you can request a trial to test it out and see what it can add to your workflow. So you can request that trial right through your GlobalMapper. If you go to the help menu, you should be able to request a trial. So let's see what our next question is. Our next question is, can I use bathymetric data in GlobalMapper? And Mackenzie is going to answer that question.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to bring up another GlobalMapper workspace here. And here I have a tile of what looks like elevation data. I've got some outlines some states on the west coast of the continental US here, California, Oregon, and Nevada. And the data that we're looking at here has some bathymetric data. It's actually a hybrid data set from the GEBCO data set. And so we've got some bathymetric data here. We've also got some terrestrial data. So this is a great way to demonstrate that GlobalMapper doesn't, so much care that you're working with subsea data or, traditional terrestrial elevation data. GlobalMapper will interpret both, will work with both, and essentially treat them the same as you're moving through some analysis processes. So here, as I said, this is a hybrid data set. We can see clearly based on the states here, sort of where the land portion is. And then we go down and based on the elevation shader, we can see that we get to some negative values as we dip below sea level, and we're looking at the sea floor. This is 3D data. It can be viewed in the 3D viewer, of course. It can also be shown with the path profile tool. I can draw a profile here, across a good portion of our subsea data, our bathymetric data onto the edge of our land area here, and resize this dialog. And we can see the profile of that elevation as it climbs up above sea level. We get to what we know as land. Now, a common problem that people have when they bring in bathymetric data, whether it's gridded data like this or whether, it's soundings, it's point features, it's a, point cloud format file looking at bathymetry, is the scaling of data. So as we saw in that path profile, that cross-sectional view, our subsea, our data here, our ocean floor is showing with our negative elevation values. That's the way I want it to be. So this tile of data loaded in as I would like to see it. But in the case that maybe my bathymetric data isn't scaled with negative values, but that's how I would like to see it in GlobalMapper, there's a way to resolve that through the layer options here. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the layer options for this tile of 3D elevation data here. And we have a tab here to alter elevation values, and I can apply a scale factor. So in the case that I need to essentially flip the sign on my elevation data, I would scale by -1, that's a multiplication factor here. I could click apply, and we see this data flip. We can consult the elevation shader. I'll toss this dialog over to the other side. Our land area elevation data is now showing our negative values, and our bathymetric data here is showing positive values. The opposite of what I really want here, but it shows how easily I can scale this data. I'll return my scale factor to 1 to restore our correctly visualized hybrid data set here. And I'll take a look at how maybe I can remove the terrestrial area of this data. I'm actually going to do this through the same tab of the layer options. I'm just going to crop this data based on an elevation value. So again, opening the layer options for this data, I'm going back to the alter elevation values tab. And here I have this section for a valid elevation range. We can see these values encompass the entirety of this tile of data. So going from negative values with our minimum valid elevation up to our positive values, about 4,300 meters here. I can change this to 0 as my top available elevation. When I click apply or OK in this case, my data is then cropped based on those elevation values. So we can see, I just chose 0 because that's, traditionally where the coastline is. And we can see that it's pretty well cropped along the boundary of my states here. We've got some islands cropped out towards the bottom of the screen here. And then within the California, I believe in a bay here, we've got some lower elevation values as well that have been retained. But with this simple crop option, I removed the terrestrial data from this LiDAR data or from this hybrid data set, and I'm looking only at the bathymetric data. Now, this is an elevation grid, so this is a raster, 3D raster grid here, and just like with a digital terrain model, I can use any of my terrain editing or processing tools in GlobalMapper to work with and interact with this data specifically. So something that I can do pretty easily here in GlobalMapper is to create contours or generate some contour lines. I'm going to make some 500-meter contours, so a little coarser resolution here. It's going to default to the displayed elevation range that I have here. So from our negative value, our minimum, up to 0 along our coastline. And clicking OK, GlobalMapper is going to work through, take a look at the elevation values here, whether they're positive or negative, and find those lines, draw those lines at the desired contour interval. In the end, just like creating contour lines for a terrestrial land DTM maybe, we're going to see some 3D vector features describing the sea floor in this case. So I can turn off some layers or hide some layers in my workspace, and we can see these contour lines. We can see labels pop up as I zoom in, and we can see as we drop off a little bit right off the coast here, the seafloor gets lower, the water gets deeper as we move along here. So really the takeaway from this, working with a little bit of bathymetric data here, is that GlobalMapper absolutely can work with bathymetric data. It's really easy to do. All of the same tools are available to you, whether you're working with terrestrial or bathymetric data. And GlobalMapper doesn't really discriminate between the two data types. It will take whatever elevation values are loaded in, allows you to scale or offset those values to get them within the appropriate elevation range so that they're representing the area accurately, and then any terrain or grid analysis can be done from that point on. And with that, I will return to our list of frequently asked questions, and we will move on to our next question here, which also works with some 3D data. It is, how do I vertically transform my 3D data? And to answer this question, we are going to see Jenna, another member of our technical support team, answer this question and show a little bit of this process in GlobalMapper.
Hi, I'm Jenna, and I'm part of the tech support team here at Blue Marble Geographics. Today I'm going to answer the question, how do I vertically transform my 3D data in GlobalMapper? Can I do a vertical transformation in GlobalMapper? And the answer is yes, you can. However, you do need our other software, Geographic Calculator, installed and licensed on your machine. So if you don't have Geographic Calculator, I recommend contacting us for a free trial so that you can try this out. All right, let's begin. So in GlobalMapper, you're probably very familiar with the configuration menu and the projection menu here. And you'll notice that there isn't normally an option here for the vertical system. In order to turn this on, we need to go to GeoCalc mode. So you'd find the GeoCalc projection mode button on the GeoCalc toolbar. If you don't see that toolbar, you can easily check your view menu and see what toolbars you have on. Make sure that that's on. So I've selected GeoCalc mode, and now when I look in my projection settings, you'll see that I have different options here, including the vertical coordinate system. Now I'm going to load in my data. I have a LiDAR data from Sydney, Australia, and it is in ellipsoidal height. So we're going to transform that to AHD height. But first, let's take a look at the data. You can see that I've chosen to color by elevation here. That way we can easily look over at the legend and see the range of heights that we have. So it goes up to about 125 meters here. Now let's begin the transformation. So back in our projection, we can double check our systems, and we see that GlobalMapper recognized that we are in GDA 2020. You can also double check anything that needed to be changed. Here, we can see that our datum references the GRS 1980 ellipsoid, and that's where we're getting our ellipsoidal height. Now we want to change this, so we're going to click on the ellipsis button, the 3 dots here, which brings you to the vertical coordinate systems. So let's go ahead and choose continent. You can then either type in here to search, or you can navigate to the country of choice, and then you'll see the systems available for that area. I'm choosing AHD height and clicking OK. The next dialog asks us what transformation we would like to use. So in this case, there are a couple different geoid models, and you might find that the transformation that you want to use is in red. If it is, that means that you will need to download the missing files. Very easy to do usually. You just right click on that and click download missing files. Now, if that doesn't work, that's because we don't have the authority to distribute those files, so you would need to get those from your local authority and then bring those files into your program data folder for Geographic Calculator. Once you have those in there, you'll be able to use it. But I have Australian Geoid 2020 all downloaded, so I'm just going to select that and click OK. So again, you can just verify that you have the right transformation here and click Apply. Now you'll notice nothing changed immediately on the screen. That's okay. We're just going to need to export this last file and then bring it back in to see the changes in elevation. So I'm going to go ahead to export. It's just going to confirm the transformation here. And again, this dialog just reminds us that it's going to be in the projection of our workspace. And finally, you might want to choose this option to add the system to the header. So I'm just going to select HD height there and click OK. I'm going to name my file and click Save. So this is our last step. After this export is complete, we'll bring it back in and we'll check to see if we have a change in elevation. We're expecting about a 25-meter shift, the separation here from the ellipsoidal height to the geoid in this area. So let's go ahead and open that up. And then just checking that we have the right projection here. Since it doesn't always automatically read this, I'm just going to select have HD height and load everything in. Turn off the other one and you'll see that the points here are definitely lower. We have about the amount of separation that we would expect, so we know that the transformation was successful. Thank you for watching, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.
Okay, and we're back to our menu screen here. And so we are going to ask our penultimate question here, which is, how can I incorporate scripting into my GlobalMapper workflow? And again, one of our technical support specialists is helping us out today. Uning is going to talk to us about how to do this.
Now we are introducing how to integrate scripting into GlobalMapper workflow. GlobalMapper scripting is a way that allows users to create a customized workflow to do batch processes. The script is stored as a proprietary file. It's called GlobalMapper script GMS file, and it can be run from within the application. interface using the file, open script editor, and open the file, GMS file to run script. Or it can be also automatically run in the background by double-clicking the GMS file or code from the command line on the machine, as long as you have GlobalMapper stored on your machine. User will benefit from automating workflow via scripting. Users don't have to stay in front of the machine to only operate the software for repetitive work tasks. And it will so the scripting will save time, and plus multiple GMS files could be run at the same time. So these automation scripts do enhance proficiency. There are a couple of scenarios when one would like to integrate scripting into their workflow. Here I have an example here where I would like to reclassify many of my land cover and save it to another file format, JP2000. I reclassify because I focus on the tree cover specifically at the Amazon forest. So now I got like the land cover data in Southern America. I like to first use the GUI to see how reclassification works. So let's go to the analysis, raster reclassification. And you might notice that there is only one input layer can be select. So that is why we further need a scripting method. Now I randomly select one of the layer as input, and we load palette from layers, and we can see that the reference palette is linked to the original TIFF file, which has these categories. On the right side, we should define the reclassification rule. We can also load our GlobalMapper rule file that I generate using this dialog by saving the preset definition, and we load it back. You can see that I have 4 categories right now. I focus on tree cover for the first index, and I have a couple more like build-up structure, water bodies, and any other categories. After the rule is validated, I click OK. Now GlobalMapper is doing reclassifying right now, and through interface. So, but only for one layer. So you can see the output, zooming. You can see now it is reclassified, and you can further export by right-click, layer, and go to export to choose whatever the file format you would like to export, and click OK. To be more efficient, I have created a script that is used for process the same workflow for multiple files, like we do through interface. But we need script right now, so that's unload all by using Ctrl+U. And let's take a look at what the script looks like. By going to File, Open Script Editor, and I open my script file. In this script, you might notice I use the loop to try to loop my commands over the folders within the directory specified here that match one or more masks I specified as the second parameter. So you might notice that I use the max and separated by the blank space, and I just focus on the 0 to 9 in north latitude to 0 to 9 in south latitude. And now for each file, the loop helps to do each command like in order. First, import. The second, raster reclassify. And in the end, we export the raster into different type, raster type. We now set JPEG 2000. Using this loop command, you can just by one click run the script, and it will start looping over 112 files in that directory, and to do import, reclassify, and export. After hours while scripting is running, and when it's done, you can see that I save my output in this folder called Reclassify. They have a bunch of JP2 files stored, and I load it back in GlobalMapper. You can see now the land cover data is reclassified, so I can focus mainly on the tree cover category versus non-tree land cover to do the further research if needed. For more information about the scripting, you can go to our website, and there's a support, knowledge base, and there's a GlobalMapper scripting reference in PDF file we can download. So you can see that a full list of functionality that GlobalMapper script can provide, and you should know that which kind of parameter and the value should be set.
Okay, thank you, Uning, for providing us with that answer. So we are going to run just a little bit over our time today, so we hope that you'll hang out with us for the next 5 or 6 minutes. And we are going to ask our final question, which is, where can I find help with GlobalMapper?
All right, so I will be answering this one, and I'm going to start in the application again. So I'm going to bring back up one of the workspaces, maybe the first one that I worked with here. And help for GlobalMapper can be found a bunch of different places. Uning, at the end of her workflow, showed where you can find some help, but it is also available directly through the program. So if you have a question with something, maybe you're offline, you don't have internet connection, you can access the help files from the help menu here, or using the F1 shortcut key, as is common with a lot of Windows programs. Of course, this opened on my secondary monitor here, but I'll just drag it into view so I can see it on top of my GlobalMapper program. And here is the knowledge base for GlobalMapper. So this has a lot of information about all the different tools and settings for tools within the GlobalMapper program. We try to break it down fairly logically here. We have a whole scripting reference section where you can see different parameters for scripting. We have a section on the control center about the different GlobalMapper menus that we have, like the analysis menu, and that's where I can find things like creating an elevation grid from 3D data, whether that's point cloud data or vector data. Or I'll open the page here about creating contours, since we saw that workflow just a little bit ago. You have a picture of the dialogue, a lot of visuals within these help files, as well as some descriptions for all of the options and settings that you'll find within each of these dialogues. So it can really help you, get some more knowledge about GlobalMapper, answer any questions that you have. It's a great resource just to know how to access and where to find. And it is also completely searchable. So I can enter a search term here, maybe for a specific tool or a specific function I'm trying to accomplish, maybe help me find the correct page in the help files. This same help file content that I'm looking at through the program is also available online. So I'll bring back up my browser window here. And this is the GlobalMapper knowledge base online. It's a similar layout, just a little bit of a different interface for the web here. And we have all of the same content. It's categorized in this table of contents here, but we can find the individual pages again, navigating to the same create contours tool here, and it's the same content. So you can access this from online or within the application. GlobalMapper, or Blue Marble, actually does create a lot of content to help users use the program better in addition to the knowledge bases. We have a support tab on our website where we have, obviously where to download the programs. We have a page listing all of the knowledge base files for all of our programs. So if you don't know how to get to that online knowledge base, you can do so right from our website. We have the GlobalMapper user guide. That's what we were just looking at online. There's also a getting started guide, sort of a very top level intro to the program. The GlobalMapper scripting language reference, which Uneng showed at the very end of her video for helping you maybe automate some workflows through GlobalMapper scripting. And then a Python reference if you're working in GlobalMapper Pro and incorporating GlobalMapper functionality through Python scripting, we have reference files for that as well. Scrolling down further, we have user guides for the Android and iOS versions of the GlobalMapper mobile app, so a field data collection app available on some mobile platforms. And then information about our development tools as well, if you are using those or interested in those tools. Additionally, under the support tab, we have some video tutorials. These are all hosted on YouTube. So you can go to our YouTube page, Blue Marble Geographics is the channel, and see a bunch of, previous webinars, some of these hour-long sessions, as well as some shorter videos, maybe 5 to 10 minutes about a specific tool, workflow, or functionality in the program, just to see GlobalMapper in action and support users with some different learning styles. GlobalMapper also, or Blue Marble also produces a blog here. We have a lot of content here for all of our different programs. We post here weekly with just some tips and tricks and information about certain workflows or use cases within the programs for Geographic Calculator, GlobalMapper, and GlobalMapper Pro. So I definitely recommend maybe keeping up with the blog and checking out these articles if you have some time just to learn a little bit more about GlobalMapper. There is also training. We mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we do host training classes online and hopefully an in-person class in March of 2023. So if you would really like to dive deep into the GlobalMapper program and learn directly from our experts, feel free to check out the training courses. That would be found under the Education tab on our website here, GIS training.
And we also have a great support team who you met today throughout the webinar with all of their very helpful videos, who are also available to answer any questions that you might have at geohelp@bluemarblegeo.com. We have a really great team who answers in a really great amount of time, I would say about a business day or less. And again, if you have technical questions, GeoHelp@bluemarblegeo.com is the place to go. If you have more licensing or sales questions that you would like answered, I would recommend starting with orders@bluemarblegeo.com because our sales support team has expertise in licensing and of course the products as well. So they can certainly help you. We hope that you have found this webinar useful. We tried to answer all of our most frequently asked questions. If you have questions that we didn't answer today, please put them in the questions panel. We will follow up with you with an answer. If you have any ideas for things you'd like us to do webinars on, you can put that in the questions panel also. We are always looking to cover topics that our customers are interested in. That is one of our pillars of operation, is to hear our customers and work with you to have an answer or include something in our software. So we look forward to hearing from you. Again, I hope that you found this very useful. And on behalf of Mackenzie and I, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that we'll see you at future GeoTalks Express.